Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 774. I started off with d4, my opponent went d5, and we get into a Slav defense, which is normal for the first three moves. Let's see, I played with knight to c3, knight to f3 rather, not knight to c3, that's knight f3. Takes control of the e5 square and prevents pawn to e5, which is the win-hour gambit, or the win-hour counter gambit it's sometimes called. Anyway, the normal responses here, knight f6 is by far the main move, and e6 is an interesting second choice, just setting up the pawn triangle formation right away, knight f6 or e6. Taking is possible, just like with the queen's gambit accepted. Black will get some play against that pawn, and in most lines will recapture it. For example, well, e3 is the main move, bishop e6, and a4 to to trade off the b pawn when it gets there. Knight f6 and knight a3, and now white is rounding up that pawn and has decent activity as well. So that's probably better for white. So anyway, going back to the game. He played bishop g4, which is a very rare fourth choice. And I played e3, which is the main move here in the database, but it's not the best move. Actually, the best move is knight e5, and I really should think of this. I don't know why. I've talked about this before. But when the bishop comes out early, the knight is not pinned. You know, there's sort of this reflexive idea to think of the knight as pinned, but when the knight is not pinned, it can often counterattack the bishop. In this case, this gains a tempo. The bishop can go back to c8 or to e6. This is the chess engine preference with a line like this. Takes and takes, and well, white's better having gained a tempo. So that's better than e3, which just leads to a normal opening position. In fact, if he would play knight f6 in this position, we'd have a pretty standard position. Normally it's reached in the other move order, knight f6 first and then bishop to g4. But instead he played knight d7. I never did figure out the point of his delaying this knight f6 move. It seems pretty natural as well as being the standard move. Maybe you want to delay it if you plan to play the move f5. You want to wait, maybe get e6 and f5 and set up some kind of stonewall and then play knight f6. But that's not what he did in the game, so I didn't really find the point to why he played that way. Anyway, I go h3, kicking the bishop back, and we get some normal development for the next few moves. He sets up the typical pawn triangle. I go bishop d3, he goes knight to f6, finally getting the knight out. I castle, bishop e7, and I go b3. So yeah, my opponent lets me castle, and then I will often defend this c pawn with another pawn, so that my bishop isn't dragged away from this good diagonal here, and that lets me maybe even drop the bishop back without having to worry about the pawn and set up a battery here along that diagonal. So that's often the way I play it. I wait until after I've castled, because before you've castled, you can bring his bishop out and pin that knight, and of course you can break the pin with bishop to d2, but a lot of times the bishop wants to go to b2, and so this is just a way of avoiding those pins and trying to get the bishop to the best square. Anyway, he went and castled at this point, and I played the move e4. And actually e4 is a big mistake. So it was not properly prepared, and black has a winning tactic here. So if you want to think about this for a while, why don't you pause the video here and see if you can figure out black to play and get a winning edge here. Okay, yeah, I'm going to give the answer away now. Last chance to pause the video. The key idea is to take advantage of this e4 pawn push, which was a bit premature, and you start with the move bishop to b4, which attacks the loose knight. So that's a part of it. That the e4 push was premature, and the reason it was premature is because this knight here is undefended. So let's see, I guess I could have tried pushing the pawn, attacking his knight, but he takes my knight attacking the rook. So he comes out with a big advantage in that line as well. But if you just, the main point I want to show is that if you just defend the bishop, or defend the knight with the bishop, he can trade it off. And now, because the e-pawn is undefended, he can take the pawn. And it's not just about winning the pawn, it's a fork. And it actually wins a piece. Probably the best way out is to give up the bishop, because the knight is pinned and can't move anyway. So that's, yeah, black is just a piece up for nothing. I have no compensation there. So, yeah, this e4 is a losing move. But, well, black needs to spot the right idea. Anyway, he just took the pawn, and we get into a position which is pretty much the way I was expecting things to turn out. Although I was expecting him to take here, and instead he went knight b6. Actually, he can get a decent game. Black can get a good game here. So that e4 move was also a mistake because it weakened the d-pawn, and he can get a better version of what happened in the game if he just takes here and then plays knight to f6, kicking the bishop, and then taking on f3. And now I'm left with this awkward choice of, you know, taking with the pawn, messing up my kingside pawn structure, but holding on to the d-pawn, or taking with the queen and giving up the d-pawn altogether. And yeah, this is black is a pawn up, and there's not as much compensation here as there was in the game. In the game, black went through some contortions to win the pawn and actually ended up in a slightly worse position. So anyway, let's go back to the game. I played e4, he took, I took, and then he played knight to b6. And yeah, I don't really understand that move either. The exchange on e5 is pretty standard and natural. You get your knight to f6 with the tempo. So even if you're not winning a pawn, it seems like a good thing to do. Let's see, I developed my bishop to e3. Wanted to defend that pawn now so I could move my knight. And he starts trading. So he takes, I take, he plays f5, kicking my bishop. I drop back to d3. Bishop c2 might have been a little better, but this is still okay. And now he plays f4, kicking my other bishop, dropping that back, and then he grabs on f3. And so now I don't have any choice but to take with the queen. There was no option to, say, take with the bishop and defend, take with the pawn and defend this. I'm losing that pawn anyway. So he takes, and I play rook b1 to get my rook away from his queen. So I'm down a pawn here, but the chess engine actually gives a slight edge to white in this position. So black has just gone to a little bit too much trouble to win that pawn, and he's left with some weaknesses, particularly the weak e6 pawn, as well as the weak f pawn, and so his king position is slightly weakened as well. And the other piece of compensation I have here is I have the bishop pair and he doesn't. So between his slightly wrecked pawn structure and my bishop pair, I actually have a slight edge, even though he's a pawn up. So so the game continues like that. He goes rook a to d8, pressure on my bishop. I have to drop back. Bishop f6, bishop b2, just countering the queen there. The queen dropped back to d6, and I went queen e4. Now I'm already trying to eye these pawns here, as well as set up this battery. And you know, I want to avoid this trade of bishops if I can, and this kind of buys me a tempo. But well, rook f to d1, I get another tempo here, queen to e7, and then I take. And after this, I'm getting my pawn back. So it seems like I think black's moves were okay along there. There was no further blunders. So maybe I was just going to get a pawn back no matter what. He can take with either the queen or the rook. If he takes with the rook, I would take on f4. And actually, the chess engine prefers this. Maybe because he can trade now and get rid of the bishop pair. Although his pawn structure looks like it's a little bit weak, but Yeah, the chess engine says it's not a huge advantage for white. After this, after queen takes, and I grab here with check, I guess because his king position is more exposed, it starts to give white a significant edge here. So he played king g7, defending his bishop, and yeah, was that strictly necessary? The bishop was already defended with the queen and the rook, but well, having another defender frees up one of those pieces to move, I guess. So I bring my rook out to d1, hitting the queen. Queen went to c7. Yeah, so the queen was free to move there. I guess that's the point. And I went bishop to a3. Decided to keep the bishop pair and not trade. He played c5, trying to shut my bishop out. Bring my bishop back around to c1, taking a look at the f-pawn. And he went queen to e5. So queen to g4. I don't want to trade queens either. Let's see, the material is even here, but you know what advantage I have here consists of better activity of my pieces. If I just trade queens, it might dissipate my advantage. So I want to keep the material on here. Let's see. He went with bishop to e7 here. Played bishop to d2, trying to get to some better squares, and then he played rook f6, and this is definitely a mistake. He's got too many pieces lined up along this diagonal, something to look out for in your own games. If you start to put pieces in particular configurations, you know, they're just asking for tactics, and the tactic, of course, here is going to be some kind of skewer or pin along that diagonal. So I play queen f3 to set that up, and yeah, it appears there's just no good way for him to escape. Let's see, he tried queen h5 here, and I just traded, and played bishop c3, so I won the exchange. And now he played knight d7. I suppose he's just a little bit confused here at this point, or discouraged. Anyway, that's just gives up the knight. The funny thing is, I didn't take it right away. I gave him one last chance to save that knight. He could have taken back with a knight here, but he took with a king, and then I grabbed the knight. So anyway, I'm just a rook up, and there was nothing interesting that happened the rest of the game. He just played on until we got to this position, and he resigned, where I was about to I don't know, I could either checkmate him with the king and rook, or I could pass create a queen and then checkmate him with the queen and rook. So anyway, he resigned at this point, and I thought it was an interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you again soon. Bye.